Exactly.
I love it because imposter syndrome, in some ways, it's a sneaky little booger, isn't it?
Wow.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Simply Human YouTube channel and podcast where we explore the strengths and challenges of being simply human. I'm Christina Caro, licensed clinical psychologist.
And I'm Karen Lynskey, leadership and self-trust coach.
In the last couple of episodes, we've been exploring the coping habit of avoiding and how
Mhm.
avoiding, while bringing immediate relief from stressors, inevitably makes our world smaller and smaller. So today we're revisiting how this relates to imposter syndrome and how we can recognize avoidance patterns that may be arising when we are overcome by imposter syndrome. Before we dive in, we are so close to reaching a big
Oh,
milestone
close.
of 100 subscribers. So if you're new to the channel, please consider hitting the subscribe button. It is free and it really helps us grow the channel and let YouTube know that this is content that they should be sharing. And what really actually helps is they're looking at engagement. And so that means if you can leave a comment, that would really help a lot. And you can leave a comment about what you think about the episode. We are always looking for feedback on what future content or future topics you would like us to cover. And you can throw up a recipe or just share an experience that you might have had of just being a human being in the world today. And this is part of our goal of building a supportive community. So that would also help move us in that direction. Now, Karen, imposter syndrome is a topic that is near and dear to your heart. And if you're new to our channel, you can check out actually our first 4 episodes, and we'll put the link into the show notes, or we did a deep dive in imposter syndrome. But can you tell us a little bit more about why you see a link between avoidance and imposter syndrome?
Imposter syndrome is really dear to my heart because I just lived that life. And let me tell you guys, after our last episode, I had a huge aha moment when I realized how much imposter syndrome had really been a hidden driver behind my avoidance patterns. I've always knew about avoidance patterns. So this was from a while back when imposter syndrome was such a big thing in my life. But when you explained, Christina, those concepts, it made me connect the dots in a way I never had before. So when I shared this with you, you asked a few questions, and then we realized it was actually a set of unconscious avoidance patterns.
So, in that conversation, we were talking about how avoidance could be like such a habit that we stop even being aware that we're avoiding. I think you brought that up, Karen. The problem with avoidance is that it is a self reinforcing strategy, in that when we feel discomfort or there's some stressor that we want to avoid and we avoid it, the stress goes away. And so we're actually rewarded for the strategy of avoiding. And like I said, that might be a temporary solution, but that power of reward will keep us doing avoidance even in situations where we probably could figure it out or tolerate it or approach it, but we get into this unconscious habit of just going into avoidance. So last week we went over a model that comes out of ACT therapy, acceptance and commitment therapy, called the choice point model. And it helps us start to learn that when difficult emotions arise, we can learn to first stay, don't react, just try to stay and pause. And then we have this choice. We can either move away from that discomfort, but also we move away from what's authentic for us. We move away from perhaps our values, but we get that temporary relief, or we can move towards our values are the person that we want to be. And even though there's still that discomfort, it helps motivate committed action. So if you haven't listened to that episode yet, again, we'll put a link in the show notes because it's an important part of understanding how you can have some strategies, because they're the same strategies if you also like Karen have dealt with the imposter syndrome, and there's a connection for you between imposter syndrome and avoiding.
So today's focus is what I would call recognition, helping you, the listeners, identify whether imposter syndrome might be unconsciously steering your choices away from growth and towards a really smaller, safer world like it had been for me. We're just trying to bring up some awareness to a pattern that those of you who might have imposter syndrome like I might not even have noticed. When I was reflecting after our last recording, Christina and I uncovered my avoidance patterns, those what I call the way moves we discussed in our last episode, and Christina just talked a bit, where there was a number of feelings that weren't just discomfort. It was very specific feelings of self-doubt, fear of being found out, feeling just that I'm always over my head, or this panic someone would discover that I didn't belong. All these emotions are tied to my imposter syndrome. It's amazing because it disguises itself as actually rational decision making. I tell myself, oh, I'm just being realistic about my qualifications, when actually I was unconsciously diminishing my qualifications, or I don't know, waste their time, when I was actually minimizing the expertise I was bringing. But really, in the end, I was really avoiding situations where I might feel exposed.
Well, so then what would you say are the key differences between, like, kind of what you're describing sounds like self-doubt, and then there's imposter syndrome specifically?
That's a great question. I thought about this and I was saying about general self-doubt is usually about a specific skill or situation. I'm not sure I can handle this specific presentation. But as we've talked about in our previous episode, it goes a lot more deeper with imposter syndrome. It's almost about my fundamental right to be there. It's like, I don't deserve this opportunity, or everyone else belongs here except me. It creates this constant fear of being discovered as a fraud.
Yeah, I remember those moments when Karen was my boss, and she would come to my office sometimes, and you would just say, I'm a fraud. I'm a fraud. And you would be in this distress. And you just thought Karen was the best boss in the whole wide world. So I was like, I don't understand why. You're smart and you're kind and you're a great role model as a leader.
Thank
So
you.
in my mind, I'm like, what is she talking about? Like, so kind of what you're saying, like, these are the stories in your head, maybe not at all reflected on what was outside of you. But yeah, so looking back, how do you think having those stories in your head then maybe fueled those avoidance patterns?
Well, I know when you gave me those compliments, I'm like, oh, she's just being nice. Right. So that's the interesting part of it. That's how you think. She's just being nice. She's expected to say that because she's trying to make me feel better. But she really thinks I'm a fraud. Just let me just be clear on that. So with the imposter syndrome avoidance, you're not just avoiding discomfort. The whole point of what I was avoiding back then, and you might be avoiding, is visibility, growth opportunities, anything that puts me in the spotlight, because I don't want to be exposed.
Oh man. I don't know, that just kind of breaks my heart. That sounds really sad.
I know. Looking back, it's really sad. It was really sad. But I'm glad, I worked through that. And that's the main thing. And that's what I love about my coaching. So I'm helping others to work through that as well. So let me give you an example, because maybe that will help make it more concrete. So there was countless times I was in a meeting with senior leaders and I had a good insight, question, good idea, but I stayed quiet. That's a classic imposter syndrome, unconscious avoidance. I told myself, they probably already thought of this, or I don't want to sound stupid, but really I was just avoiding and staying small because I didn't want to stand out or get judged. Now, some of the other imposter syndrome examples I used to do and now bring awareness to my clients struggling with imposter syndromes could be not applying for stretch roles at another company or in my own company, or even applying for leadership opportunities. They would have to be given to me. Like, I wouldn't apply, right? I wouldn't say, oh, I want this, right? I would never do that. I also wouldn't take credit for my contributions. I'd always say it's someone else, or, I gave someone else more credit. So like if two of us worked on it, I'd give them the credit and wouldn't say, and kind of like believe that they're the ones that took it over the ball, even though I had equal share in it. That's just the way I thought, right? Or sometimes I never really actively networked. And I never understood why till we brought this whole avoidance thing up. And I realized I didn't want to put myself out there professionally. I stayed with the same company for so long, I think 25 years. because of the fact that I didn't want other people to find like I'm a fraud. Like I'm doing okay here. At least I know the players. They like me. So I'm safer here. So I don't think I applied, not because of loyalty, although I'd like to say because of loyalty or because of my friends or something, but I would think that I was scared that if I had to go, they might feel like I'm a fraud. And then I set up these expectations and then I can't do anything out there or I would disappoint. Right. So Christina, let me ask you, are there any other examples that you want to share from your work with clients?
Well, listening to your examples, it's interesting. I see it here in a completely different way in my outdoor community because you're talking about the business world. And I live in this mountainy outdoor community where what is valued is athleticism. And so what I see sometimes is people might be avoiding like reaching out to friends or building that friendship circle because there's this whole barrier of, do I belong? Am I badass enough? Or maybe they'll realize I'm not. And so there's this self-censorship and avoiding and being anxious about connecting. But then, like I said, the world gets smaller and smaller, and you have that increase in isolation. And that's around something, it's not around work or something, but it's that same feeling of I'm going to be found out that I'm not one of them. And so I'm going to avoid. Yeah. Anyway, so I noticed that, when you were describing your experience, you really framed it as being unconscious. Like you said, you were rationalizing it, felt like rational thought. So what is the distinction for you between like conscious avoiding and unconscious avoiding?
That's a really good question. So let me give an example, a work example from my own experience. I remember when I was asked to lead an important project with senior leadership visibility. And instead of saying I'm avoiding this because I feel like an imposter, of course. Yeah. And I wasn't entirely aware my imposter syndrome was getting triggered. So consciously, I rationalized it completely different. I convinced myself I was too busy with my current workload. The timing wasn't right, that so-and-so would be better suited than I was. I mean, I generally believe that, that Marie would be better suited. And all of these were logical, practical reasons at the time. I mean, they sound logical, right? Like I'm too busy. I mean,
yeah.
You could accept that, right? But when I think back now, again, it was like imposter syndrome was driving the decision from behind the scenes. So the unconscious part is I didn't even recognize that the real reason was for why I was saying no. I mean, my brain was protecting me from the terror. I mean, literally terror being found out in front of leaders. But it disguised that fear as reasonable business logic. And that's what makes it so different, because you think you're being smart and practical, but in reality, you're actually being driven by fear that you don't even acknowledge.
And that sounds, really hard. Or I'm always trying to help clients understand that the stuff that's unconscious, that's where we have our greatest work to do, because it's really hard to bring what's in that blind spot that we've talked about in that Johari window, the middle of my own back, unless something else brings it to my awareness, like we don't know that it's happening. So it is really hard. Like, how would you help someone be able to recognize if it's happening in the unconscious? Like, what could they ask themselves if this is what's going on? Because they don't even know what's going on.
I think it's that I can give you some questions. And I also think getting a coach or therapist to talk through some of this would also help. Okay. But the questions I would pose is this: where in my life can I see myself playing small more than I see other people? Like if I would have noticed other people, and I hate to use comparison, but this is one time I would use comparison because I'm thinking, am I playing it small? And then even like opportunities, why am I passing? Remember I said I wouldn't apply to other jobs. Why am I passing up opportunities? Like in the last 6 months, 3 months, month, what was my real reasoning? Right? Was I unqualified? And yet we always know, just go out and just apply and then see what, I don't even make a decision. I'm just so afraid I'm going to get the job. I don't even apply. It's so funny. I mean, our old boss, we talked about, Harry used to say, Karen, just apply. You don't have a decision to make yet, just apply. But I was just so afraid. And when I imagine taking a bigger step, what specific fears come up? Is it the fears that we just talked about? And asking myself, is it because I'm scared that I'm going to be found out as a fraud? I would directly ask myself, could it be the fact that I'm afraid I'm going to be found out? So there's another thing is, do I find myself, I'm not ready yet repeatedly for the same opportunities? And I think the point, we forget that in every opportunity, it's a growth opportunity. You're never going to be ready for a specific position. You won't have everything check marked out. Part of it is this growth, and you're supposed to go to the next level because there's some that you know and there's some that you don't know. And that's just part of the normal way of moving into a bigger role. But I was so afraid of what I didn't know.
So I really love that last one. But I just want you to clarify that for me one more time. So if I notice myself kind of in a pattern of saying, I'm not ready. I don't think I'm ready for that. And I'm doing it repeatedly. Then the question what do I ask myself then?
Things like I would ask myself, what would make me ready? So asking for specific skills or something, what am I missing? So next time I can't use the same excuse. Because then would be things like, oh, so that means I have to develop this, right? And ask people, it would allow me somewhere to go and instead of just getting stuck in that imposter syndrome, I'm not ready yet, and just end it.
Or I guess if you asked yourself, well, what would make me more ready? And it's like nothing. Then I would be like, oh, shoot, that means I am ready, right?
Yes, 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 yes.
I love it because imposter syndrome, in some ways, it's a sneaky little booger, isn't it?
Wow.
So,
and it likes to play unconsciously too. Even imposter syndrome likes to play unconsciously. It's really hard to decide, really to know. Like, I didn't know I had imposter syndrome for a long time.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. I mean, I think that's what I'm really picking up. I mean, this is something Karen has shared that she has struggled with. This is not something I have dealt with. Even though I'm on the autistic spectrum, I never learned masking. There are a lot of autistic people who do masking have imposter syndrome. I don't. So all of this is still kind of new for me, and learning from Karen about what it's all about. So one of the things you mentioned was there is this internal dialogues, because like I said, I think imposter syndrome is like a sneaky little thing. So how can people recognize the voice of imposter syndrome?
So it's interesting because when I thought hard about it, reflected back, I remember I was like, who am I to, right? I fill in that blank. Who am I to take on this job? Or they'll figure out that I don't know what I'm doing. That's a big one. They'll figure it out. The other shoe will drop, right? Sooner or later. Everyone else is more qualified. I just know it. Everyone else is more qualified. I just got lucky that last time. That was something I always do. Like, I never thought it was because of my qualifications. I was just blessed as a spiritual person. I would say I was just blessed. Or I just got lucky. That's what I would always use, Or I would use this. I need more experience before I can XYZ. So it's very specific versus that healthy caution, which might say, let me prepare well for this, or I want to make sure I can deliver quality work.
That I like that, because you're actually moving more towards action. Let me prepare well for this. That is it is a different type of self-talk. So then how would you describe the consequences of the years where you were unconsciously falling prey to imposter syndrome, since you weren't really aware that it was triggering avoidance?
Well, here's what I've learned and also share with my clients. And you can see when imposter syndrome, if you just take a pause and you look back, and you're interested in it. And that's why sometimes a coach and a therapist could really help. It allows you to see that imposter syndrome is actually driving your choices. You're not missing that one opportunity. I was missing the confidence that would have to come from taking action despite of fear. Like we talk about courage a lot. I didn't have that courage. I was missing the evidence that I can handle more than I thought, thinking about how much resilience I really did have in the past.
Yeah.
I'm missing the connections and future opportunities that would have opened up for me. I mean, I really feel like I could have been moving faster in my career because I kept waiting for people to offer something to me because they would think I was good enough. I would never go out and apply for something, like I said earlier, which makes my world a lot smaller. I mean, I hate to I look back, I think, oh my God, what could I have been had I didn't have this imposter syndrome? So next time a similar opportunity comes up, you may have less evidence of your capability, and that will make your imposter syndrome voice even louder. It's like this ironic cycle. Trying to protect yourself from feeling like an imposter fraud actually reinforces the imposter syndrome.
You know, such an important insight, Karen, and it ties back a bit to what we talked about last episode, which is a way to become aware. If you're not aware, you've been avoiding, is looking for the loss. Because you just
Mm-hmm.
described losses. All the coulda, shoulda, wouldas are all some form of an existential loss. And looking for that can help bring that awareness. And by avoiding situations where we might feel like an imposter, or we're making our world smaller, particularly in that area of opportunity and developing authentic confidence and competence for sure.
Yeah, exactly. And you know what? When we stay in our comfort zone, which becomes smaller and smaller, and then we wonder why we didn't feel qualified for bigger things.
Yeah.
And when clients recognize this pattern but feel overwhelmed, I tell them just recognizing is huge within itself.
Yeah.
That awareness alone can shift how you make decisions. And the goal isn't to eliminate imposter feelings, because even now, sometimes I still get it. I thought I fully eliminated it, but it doesn't capture me like it used to. There's just sometimes I think that, but I know how to deal with it. And they might always be there because I'm still growing.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I mean, being a psychotherapist, so much of my work is about increasing that awareness. Awareness is incredibly powerful. So once someone recognizes this pattern, Karen, what's the important next step?
Well, I'm excited because as we share this, we hope that you have recognized this pattern and you would start to notice it in real time. Because when you feel that flutter of, I don't belong here, I'm not qualified this, or you think about your rational response and you ask, why am I saying this? Why am I saying this? You ask yourself, is this imposter syndrome talking, or is this really a skills gap that I need to address?
And then how can people tell the difference?
Imposter syndrome typically involves catastrophic thinking about being exposed or rejected, while
Okay.
genuine gaps are about specific knowledge and abilities that you can actually develop. So if the fear is about being found out as a fraud rather than about learning something new, I would say that's usually
Mm.
imposter syndrome.
Mm. Oh, I think that'll be really helpful, that distinction. And then do you see this connecting to the choice point model that we talked about in the last episode?
I got to tell you, you know this. I love the choice point model. When I learned it, it was just the ability to pause. And then that imposter feelings are the trigger that starts the
Okay.
choice point, right? And they create that difficult emotion of self doubt and fear. And then when you're at the choice point, do I want to make an away move and avoid this opportunity to protect myself of being exposed? Or do I make a towards move, align with my values, growth, authenticity, and contribution?
Well, what would you say to somebody you're coaching could be a small step that they could take this week to start shifting the pattern of just getting hooked by imposter syndrome and going into that unconscious pattern of avoidance?
I think the question that I would ask myself is, what's one small action I could take towards growth? When you ask that question, what's that one action I could take towards growth here, even if I feel like an imposter? Maybe it's like contributing to one idea in a meeting and just having that courage. Like when the senior people come into the room and then you choose not to, like I said earlier, my earlier example of like staying quiet, even though I knew that I had an insight, just having courage to share that insight and realizing it's just a perspective that I'm sharing. It doesn't have to be right or wrong, but it's my perspective, what I'm seeing. Or maybe having a conversation that I've been avoiding because I'm afraid that they're going to think I'm stupid. It's just, again, what we said earlier about having courage. The key is allowing myself to start building evidence through action that you can handle more than you think, while feeling the imposter feelings rather than waiting for them to disappear.
Yeah, and that reminds me, we'll put a link in this episode to the struggle switch. That's exactly what you're talking about, which is
Mhm.
sitting with a discomfort, but just not reacting and letting it grab you. And then I think if folks, you have imposter syndrome, I do recommend that you go through our 4-part series because I think we go more deeply and more robustly into different strategies that could complement what Karen's just talking about, which is this awareness. How do we pause and just be aware that imposter syndrome is maybe unconsciously driving avoidance in your life, and that can be a powerful step towards freedom.
I think to remember that the goal isn't to eliminate your imposter feelings, because oftentimes they show up when we're growing. And the goal is to have that awareness and choice. So again, when you notice that familiar self-doubt creeping in, just pause and ask, is this making my world bigger or smaller?
You know, Kim, when you were talking about how the way that avoidance with imposter syndrome shows up isn't just about making your world smaller, but making yourself smaller, like you
Yeah.
said. Yeah. I don't know if you've ever come across it. I can't remember if we've talked about this, but there's a quote by it's author Marianne Williamson. Some of you may remember she actually ran for president. She's like a spiritual leader or something. I'm not entirely sure. I read one of her books, Return to Love, but there's this quote that has always struck me that resonated in what you talked about today. And it really about an aspect of imposter syndrome and how it makes us smaller. And then this quote kind of turns that story upside down, the story in our head that we should be smaller. So I'm going to put the link to the full quote, but this is like an abbreviated version of it. And it goes like this: Our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure.
Mm.
It is our light, not our darkness, that frightens us. We ask ourselves, who am I to be brilliant, to be gorgeous, to be talented, to be fabulous? Actually, who are you not to be?
Mm.
Your playing small does not serve the world. There is nothing enlightened about shrinking so that other people won't feel insecure around you. We are all meant to shine as children do. And as we let our own light shine, we unconsciously give other people permission to do the same. And as we are liberated from our own fear, our presence automatically liberates others. And
Oh, I love that. And it reminds me of this quote I have here: the world needs who you were made to be. Now, I
yeah,
think everyone should print that out,
yes,
because I think
yes, I,
I like the quotes that she said. So thank you everyone for sharing your time with us. If you found this helpful, definitely go back and listen to our previous episode, Imposter Syndrome and the Choice Point Model, for the practical tools on staying present with difficult emotions. And we'll link it in the show notes. And please consider sharing in the comments below your experiences recognizing imposter syndrome patterns in your own life, any suggestions that you have, any questions you might have, or future topics of interest. You can also email us at simplyhuman.connect@gmail.com.
and thank you everyone for hanging with us. And until next time, stay curious and kind, and we'll see you in a couple of weeks.
Until next time, all.